Hey, how we doing tonight? Hey, Songbird, how we doing? So I think we're gonna have a little. I think we're gonna have a fun night. I picked some interesting stories. Hello, Lee. How are you? Oh, I'm doing all right. Been a stressful day, but I am here with you guys tonight, which makes me happy. I'm excited too. This is going to be a fun night. I've got two, possibly three stories picked out. Just give a little time for people to kind of filter in. I got to tell you, if you were here on Sunday, yes, the Twilight Zone teaser. I thought about it and I was like, um, so it was a total of 13,000 views, and the peak concurrent viewers was 585, which was ridiculous. the even I mean, Sunday was crazy. The thing that even blew me away was the fact that the thing that really blew me away was the fact that once we hit about 400, it just stayed there. And when I ended the live on Sunday night, there were still 400 people in the room. The number that blew me away, though, that night in 2 hours, in the 2 hours that I was on, I gained 950 followers. Almost 1,000 followers in 2 hours. That's crazy. But I'm just thrilled that I got to read to so many people. Hello, good evening to you. How are you? I love seeing familiar faces. You guys make me so happy. That's what people tell me. And I just enjoy the crap out of doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it. My mother, who's going to be 78 this year, she asked me, she goes, would you do this if you didn't make money at it? Well, I said, well, I'm not really making money at it right now. Oh, thank you. That's really sweet of you to say. And that's the kind of thing that kind of just is kind of wild is, people have set aside time on Wednesdays and Sundays to come and have a story read to them, which is amazing. And I truly appreciate everybody that comes in and sits and listens. And God, thank you guys for the gifts. That's really wonderful. I really appreciate that. I'm glad I can help you fall asleep. That I take that as a compliment. Lee, no, I don't go live every day. It's Wednesdays and Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Sundays is Sunday night bedtime stories where we read generally a more family oriented kids type of thing. Um, we're currently reading Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim. We have already run like Wrinkle in Time and things like that. Um, Wednesday nights, Storytime with Undead Papa is geared towards more eerie and scary stories. Edgar Allan Poe. We've done a lot of Lovecraft, but we've also done some science fiction stuff. So, yes, Tessa, spooky. And you're one to talk, Tessa. You have magical, soothing tones as well. For those of you that don't know, my friend Tessa Vale Audio is in here. Go and check her channel out. She's a fantastic, fantastic voice actor and narrator. And also just an all-around good human. I'm excited. I actually have 4 subscribers now. So. Oh, no. Well, you found me tonight, and I haven't even started reading yet. Hey, Katie, how are you? Oh, the feeling is mutual. The feeling is mutual. Well, you are in for a treat tonight. Alrighty. We'll give like another minute, and so we'll go for there. We'll go from there. But oh, Tessa throwing out the Undead Papa stickers. She's one of my subscribers. I have 4 subscribers. How wild is that? So let's see here. If I just one day at a time. All right. Turn the music down here. Well, my username being Undead Papa seems fitting. One book at a time. I'll take over the world, one story at a time. But yeah, I love zombies, and I am a father, so Undead Papa kind of works. So what do we have for tonight? As some of you may have seen the promo. Hello, Brenda. Welcome in. Well, thank you. All right. So we're going to get started. And I kind of scripted tonight a little bit, and you might understand why once I start reading. You may have understood if you saw the promo video, that tonight is a bit of a themed night. All right, we'll turn that down. So I have this whole scripted thing out because I wanted to do the whole Rod Serling thing. So humor me. Good evening. Tonight's journey begins not on a television screen, but on the printed page. Long before these stories appeared on an episode of The Twilight Zone, they lived as works of speculative fiction. Short stories written during a time when the world was balancing between wonder and anxiety. The early days of the space age, the long shadow of the Cold War, and a growing fascination with what might lie just beyond the edges of the known. The writers who explored these ideas, authors like Richard Matheson and Damon Knight, ask questions that still linger with us today. What happens when strangers arrive promising salvation? What choices would we make if the future of our world suddenly felt uncertain? And what truths might we discover if we stepped just slightly outside the boundaries of our everyday lives? So tonight, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to step into a handful of stories that once helped inspire journeys into another dimension. Stories of possibility, of irony, and of the strange corners of the human imagination. Our first stop tonight is a short story by Damon Knight. It is called To Serve Man. I know, I'm a huge nerd. But I love that. Oh, jeez. So this is To Serve Man by Damon Knight. The Canamet were not very pretty, it's true. They looked something like pigs, and something like people, and that is not an attractive combination. Seeing them for the first time shocked you. That was their handicap. When a thing with the countenance of a fiend comes from the stars and offers a gift, you are disinclined to accept. I don't know what we expected interstellar visitors to look like. Those who thought about it at all, that is. Angels, perhaps, or something too alien to be really awful. Maybe that's why we were all so horrified and repelled when they landed on their great ships and we saw what they were really like. Change the cover image, Jeremy. There we go. That's better. The Canamet were short and very hairy, thick, bristly brown-gray hair all over their abominably plump bodies. Their noses were snout-like, and their eyes small, and they had thick hands of 3 fingers each. They wore green leather harnesses and green shorts, but I think the shorts were a concession to our notions of public decency. The garments were quite modishly cut, with slash pockets and half belts in the back. The Canamet had a sense of humor, anyhow. There were 3 of them at this session of the UN, and Lord, I can tell you how queer it looked to see them there in the middle of a solemn plenary session. 3 fat, pig-like creatures in green harnesses and shorts, sitting at the long table below the podium, surrounded by the packed arcs of delegates from every nation. They sat correctly upright, politely watching each speaker. Their flat ears drooped over the earphones. Later on, I believe they learned every human language. But at this time they knew only French and English. They seemed perfectly at ease, and that, along with their humor, was a thing that tended to make me like them. I was in the minority. I didn't think they were trying to put anything over. The delegate from Argentina got up and said that his government was interested in the demonstration of a new cheap power source, which the Canamet had made at the previous session, but that the Argentine government could not commit itself as to its future policy without much more thorough examination. It was what all the delegates were saying, but I had to pay particular attention to Senor Valdez because he tended to sputter and his dictation was bad. I got through the translation all right, but with only 1 or 2 momentary hesitations, and then switched to the Polish-English line to hear how Grigori was doing with Jansowitz. Jansowitz was the cross Grigori had to bear, just as Valdez was mine. Jansowitz repeated the previous remarks with a few ideological variations, and then Secretary General recognized the delegate from France who introduced Dr. Denis Levesque, the criminologist, and a great deal of complicated equipment was wheeled in. Dr. Levesque remarked that the question in many people's minds had been aptly expressed by the delegate from the USSR at the preceding session, when he demanded, what is the motive of the Canamet? What is their purpose in offering us these unprecedented gifts while asking nothing in return? The doctor then said, "At the request of several delegates and the full consent of our guests, the Canamet, my associates, and I have made a series of tests upon the Canamet with the equipment which you see before you. These tests will now be repeated." A murmur ran through the chamber. There was a fusillade of flashbulbs, and one of the TV cameras moved up to focus on the instrument board of the doctor's equipment. At the same time, the huge television screen behind the podium lighted up, and we saw the blank faces of 2 dials, each with its pointer resting at 0, and a strip of paper with a stylus point resting against it. The doctor's assistants were fastening wires to the temples of one of the Canamet, wrapping a canvas-covered rubber tube around his forearm, and taping something to the palm of his right hand. In the screen, we saw the paper tape begin to move, while the stylus traced a slow zigzag pattern along it. One of the needles began to jump rhythmically. The other flipped halfway over and stayed there, wavering slightly. "These are the standard instruments for testing the truth of a statement," said Dr. Levesque. "Our first object, since the physiology of the Canamet is unknown to us, was to determine whether or not they react to these tests as human beings do. We will now repeat one of the many experiments which were made in the endeavor to discover this." He pointed to the first dial. "This instrument registers the subject's heartbeat. This shows the electrical conductivity of the skin in the palm of his hand, a measure of perspiration, which increases under stress. And this," pointing to the tape and stylus device, "shows the pattern and intensity of the electrical waves emanating from his brain. It has been shown with human subjects that all these readings vary markedly depending upon whether the subject is speaking the truth." He picked up 2 large pieces of cardboard, one red and one black. The red one was a square about 3 feet on a side, and the black was a rectangle 3.5 feet long. He addressed himself to the Canema. "Which of these is longer than the other?" "The red," said the Canema. Both needles leaped wildly, and so did the line on the unrolling tape. "I shall repeat the question," said the doctor. "Which of these is longer than the other?" "The black," said the creature. This time the instruments continued in their normal rhythm. "How did you come to this planet?" asked the doctor. "Walked," replied the Canema. Again the instruments responded, and there was a subdued ripple of laughter in the chamber. "Once more," said the doctor, "how did you come to this planet?" "In a spaceship," said the Canema. The instruments did not jump. The doctor again faced the delegation. "Many such experiments were made," he said, "and my colleagues and myself are satisfied that the mechanisms are effective. Now," he turned to the Canema, "I shall ask our distinguished guest to reply to the question put at last session by the delegate of the USSR, namely, what is the motive of the Canamet people in offering these great gifts to the people of Earth?" The Canema rose. Speaking this time in English, he said, "On my planet there is a saying, 'There are more riddles in a stone than in a philosopher's head.' The motives of intelligent beings, though they may at times appear obscure, are simple things compared to the complex workings of the natural universe. Therefore, I hope that the people of Earth will understand and believe when I tell you that our mission upon your planet is simply this, to bring you the peace and plenty which we ourselves enjoy.
and which we have in the past brought to other races throughout the galaxy. When your world has no more hunger, no more war, no more needless suffering, that will be our reward."
And the needles had not jumped once. The delegate from the Ukraine jumped to his feet, asking to be recognized, but the time was up and the Secretary General closed the session. I met Grigori as we were leaving the chamber. His face was red with excitement. "Who promoted that circus?" he demanded. "The tests looked genuine to me," I told him. "A circus," he said vehemently. "A second-rate farce. Second-rate fart. No, second-rate farce. If they were genuine, Peter, why was the debate stifled?" "There will be time for debate tomorrow, surely. Tomorrow the doctor and his instruments will be back in Paris. Plenty of things can happen before tomorrow. In the name of sanity, man, how can anybody just trust a thing that looks as if it ate a baby?" I was a little annoyed. I said, "Are you sure you're not more worried about their politics than their appearance?" He said, "Bah!" and he went away. The next day, reports began to come in from government laboratories all over the world where the Canamit's power source was being tested. They were wildly enthusiastic. I don't understand such things myself, but it seemed that those little metal boxes would give more electrical power than an atomic pile for next to nothing and nearly forever. And it was said that they were so cheap to manufacture that everybody in the world could have one of his own. In the early afternoon, there were reports that 17 countries had already begun to set up factories to turn them out. The next day, the Canamit turned up with plans and specimens of a gadget that would increase the fertility of any arable land by 60 to 100%. It speeded the formation of nitrates in the soil, or something. There was nothing in the newscasts anymore but stories about the Canamit. The day after that, they dropped their bombshell.
"You now have potentially unlimited power and increased food supply," said one of them.
He pointed with his three-fingered hand to an instrument that stood on the table before him. It was a box on a tripod with a parabolic reflector on the front of it.
"We offer you today a third gift, which is at least as important as the first two."
He beckoned to the TV men to roll their cameras into close-up position. Then he picked up a large sheet of cardboard covered with drawings and English lettering. We saw on it the large screen above the podium. It was clearly legible.
"We are informed that this broadcast is being relayed throughout your world," said the camera. "I wish that everyone who has equipment for taking photographs from television screens would use it now."
The Secretary General leaned forward and asked a question sharply, but the Kanama ignored him.
"This device," he said, "generates a field which no explosive of whatever nature can detonate."
There was uncomprehending silence.
The Kanama said, "It cannot now be suppressed. If one nation has it, all must have it." When nobody seemed to understand, he explained bluntly, "There will be no more war."
It was the biggest news of the millennium. It was perfectly true. It turned out that the explosions the Kanama were talking about even included gasoline and diesel explosions. They had simply made it impossible for anybody to mount or equip a modern army. We could have gone back to bows and arrows, of course, but that wouldn't have satisfied the military. Besides, there wouldn't be any reason to make war. Every nation would soon have everything. Nobody ever gave another thought to those lie detector experiments or asked the Kanamit what their politics were. Grigori was put out. He had nothing to prove his suspicions.
I quit my job at the UN a few months later because I foresaw that it was going to die under me anyhow. The UN business was booming at the time, but after a year or so, there was going to be nothing for it to do. Every nation on Earth is well on the way to becoming completely self-supporting. They weren't going to need much arbitration. I accepted a position as a translator with the Canaanite embassy, and it was there I ran into Grigori again. I was glad to see him, but I couldn't imagine what he was doing there. "I thought you were on the opposition," I said. "Don't tell me you're convinced the Canaanite are all right." He looked rather shamefaced. "They're not what they look, anyhow," he said. It was as much of a confession as he could decently make. I invited him down to the embassy lounge for a drink. It was an intimate kind of place, and he grew confidential over the second daiquiri. "They fascinate me," he said. "I hate them instinctively still, but that hasn't changed, but I can evaluate it. You were right, obviously. They mean us nothing but good, but do you know?" He leaned across the table. "The question of the Soviet delegate was never answered." I am afraid I snorted. "No, really," he said. "They told us what they wanted to do, to bring to you the peace and plenty which we ourselves enjoy. But they didn't say why." "Why do missionaries?" "Missionaries be damned," he said angrily. "Missionaries have a religious motive. If these creatures have a religion, they haven't once mentioned it. What's more, they didn't send a missionary group. They sent a diplomatic delegation, a group representing the will and policy of their whole people. Now, just what have the Canaanite as a people or a nation got to gain from our welfare?" I said, "Cultural cabbage soup. No, it's something less obvious than that, something obscure that belongs to their psychology and not to ours. But trust me, Peter, there is no such thing as a completely disinterested altruism. In one way or another, they have something to gain." "And that's why you're here," I said, "to try to find out what it is." "Correct. I wanted to get one of the 10-year exchange groups to their home planet, but I couldn't. The quota was filled a week after they made the announcement. This is the next best thing. I'm studying their language, and you know that language reflects the basic assumptions of the people who use it. I've got a fair command of the spoken lingo already. It's not hard, really. There are hints in it. Some of the idioms are quite similar to English. I'm sure I'll get the answer eventually." "More power," I said, and went back to work. I saw Grigori frequently from then on, and he kept me posted about his progress. He was highly excited about months after that first meeting. He said he got a hold of a book of the Canaanites, and it was trying to puzzle it out. They wrote in ideographs, worse than Chinese, but he was determined to fathom it if it took him years. He wanted my help. Well, I was interested in spite of myself, for I knew it would be a long job. We spent some evenings together, working with material from Canaanite bulletin boards and so forth, and with the extremely limited English Canaanite dictionary they issued to the staff. My conscience bothered me less about the stolen book, but gradually I became absorbed by the problem. Languages are my field, after all. I could not help being fascinated. We got the title worked out in a few weeks. It was How to Serve Man, evidently a handbook they were giving out to new Canaanite members of the embassy staff. They had new ones in all the time now, a shipload about once a month. They were opening all kinds of research laboratories, clinics, and so on. If there was anybody on Earth besides Grigori who still distrusted those people, he must have been somewhere in the middle of Tibet. It was astonishing to see the changes that had been wrought in less than a year. There were no more standing armies, no more shortages, no more unemployment. When you picked up a newspaper, you didn't see H-bomb or satellite leaping out at you. The news was always good. It was a hard thing to get used to. The Canamet were working on human biochemistry, and it was known around the embassy that they were nearly ready to announce methods of making our race taller, stronger, and healthier, practically a race of supermen. And they had a potential cure for heart disease and cancer. I didn't see Grigori for a fortnight after we finished working on out the title of the book. I was on a long overdue vacation in Canada. When I got back, I was shocked by the change in his appearance. "What on earth is wrong with you, Grigori?" I asked. "You look like the very devil." "Come down to the lounge." I went with him. He gulped a stiff scotch as if he needed it. "Come on, man, what's the matter?" I urged. "The Canamet have put me on the passenger list for the next exchange ship," he said. "You too, otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you." "Well," I said, "but—" "They're not altruists." I tried to reason with him, pointed out they'd made Earth a paradise compared to what it was before. He only shook his head. Then I said, "Well, what about those lie detector tests?" "A farce," he replied without heat. "I said so at the time, you fool. They told the truth, though, as far as it went." "And the book?" I demanded, annoyed. "What about that How to Serve Man? That wasn't put there for you to read. They meant it. How do you explain that?" "I've read the first paragraph of that book," he said. "Why do you suppose I haven't slept for a week?" I said, "Well?" And he smiled a curious, twisted smile. "It's a cookbook," he said. Oh, that's a classic. I love that. I would love to meet an alien. Because, I mean, why not? It's got to be better than some of the weirdos we got down here. Wow. Well, thank you guys for the likes and the shares and all of the gifts. I really appreciate that. 22 more followers. Man, if I get to 39 followers today, I'll actually cross 7,000 tonight, which would be wild. That would be so wild. All right. So sometimes the most unsettling discoveries are not about the creatures that might arrive from the stars, but about the assumptions we make when they do. In Damon Knight's story, we were reminded that appearances, intentions, and even kindness can conceal something far more complicated beneath the surface. But the unknown does not always arrive from beyond our world. Sometimes the danger is already here. Our next story comes from Richard Matheson, one of the great architects of speculative fiction, and a writer whose imagination helped shape many journeys into the Twilight Zone. It is a story about fear, about quiet rebellion, and about a small group of people forced to make an impossible choice in a world standing on the edge of catastrophe. This is Third from the Sun. His eyes were open 5 seconds before the alarm was set to go off. There was no effort in waking. It was sudden. Coldly conscious, he reached out his left hand in the dark and pushed in the stop. The alarm glowed a second, then faded. At his side, his wife put her hand on his arm. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "No, did you?" "A little," he said. "Not much." She was silent for a few seconds. He heard her throat contract. She shivered. He knew what she was going to say. "We're still going?" she asked. He twisted his shoulders on the bed and took a deep breath. "Yes," he said, and he felt her fingers tighten on his arm. "What time is it?" she asked. "About 5. We'd better get ready." "Yes, we'd better." They made no move. "You're sure we can get on the ship without anyone noticing?" she asked. "They think it's just another test flight. Nobody will be checking." She didn't say anything. She moved a little closer to him. He felt how cold her skin was. "I'm afraid," she said. He took her hand and held it in a tight grip. "Don't be," he said. "We'll be safe." "It's the children I'm worried about." "We'll be safe," he repeated. She lifted his hand to her lips and kissed it gently. "All right." They both sat up in the darkness. He heard her stand. Her night garment rustled to the floor. She didn't pick it up. She stood still, shivering in the cold morning air. "You're sure we don't need anything else with us?" she asked. "No, nothing. I have all the supplies we need in the ship. Anyways..." "What?" "We can't carry anything past the guard," he said. "He has to think you and the kids are just coming to see me off." She began dressing. He threw off the covering and got up. He went across the cold floor to the closet and dressed. "I'll get the children up," she said. He grunted, pulling clothes over his head. At the door she stopped. "Are you sure?" she began. "What?" "Won't the guard think it's funny that our neighbors are coming down to see you off, too?" He sank down onto the bed and fumbled for the clasps on his shoes. "We'll have to take that chance," he said. "We need them with us." She sighed. "It seems so cold, so calculating." He straightened up and saw her silhouette in the doorway. "What else can we do?" he asked intensely. "We can't interbreed our own children." "No," she said. "It's just..." "Just what?" "Nothing, darling. I'm sorry." She closed the door. Her footsteps disappeared down the hall. The door to the children's room opened. He heard their two voices. A cheerless smile raised his lips. You'd think it was a holiday, he thought. He pulled on his shoes. At least the kids didn't know what was happening. They thought they were going to take him down to the field. They thought they'd come back and tell their schoolmates about it. They didn't know they'd never come back. He finished clasping his shoes and stood up. He shuffled over to the bureau and turned on the light. It was odd, such an indistinguished-looking man planning this. Cold, calculating. Her words filled his mind again. Well, there was no other way. In a few years, probably less, the whole planet would go up in a blinding flash. This was the only way out. Escaping, starting all over again with a few people on a new planet. He stared at the reflection. There's no other way, he said. He glanced around the bedroom. Goodbye, to this part of my life. Turning off the lamp was like turning off a light in his mind. He closed the door gently behind him and slid his fingers off the worn handle. His son and daughter were going down the ramp. They were talking in mysterious whispers. He shook his head in slight amusement. His wife waited for him. They went down together, holding hands. I'm not afraid, darling, she said. It'll be all right. Sure, he said. Sure it will. They all went in to eat. He sat down with his children. His wife poured out juice for them. Then she went to get the food. "Help your mother, doll," he told his daughter. She got up. "Pretty soon, huh, Pop?" his son said. "Pretty soon, huh?" "Take it easy," he cautioned. "Remember what I told you. If you say a word of it to anybody, I'll have to leave you behind." A dish shattered on the floor. He darted a glance at his wife. She was staring at him, lips trembling. She averted her eyes and bent down. She fumbled at the pieces, picked up a few. Then she dropped them, all, stood up, and pushed them against the wall with her shoe. "As if it mattered," she said nervously. "As if it mattered whether the place is clean or not." The children were watching her in surprise. "What is it?" asked the daughter. "Nothing, darling, nothing," she said. "I'm just nervous. Go back to the table and drink your juice. We have to eat quickly. The neighbors will be here soon." "Pop, why are the neighbors coming with us?" asked his son. "Because," he said vaguely, "they want to. Now forget it. Don't talk about it so much." The room was quiet. His wife brought their food and set it down. Only her footsteps broke the silence. The children kept glancing at each other, at their father. He kept his eyes on the plate. The food tasted flat and thick in his mouth, and he felt his heart thudding against the wall of his chest. Last day. This is the last day. Oh, it would help if I remembered to change the screen. "You'd better eat," he told his wife. She sat down to eat. As she lifted the eating utensil, the door buzzer sounded. The utensil skidded out of her nervous fingers and clattered to the floor. He reached out quickly and put his hand on hers. "All right, darling," he said. "It's all right." He turned to the children. "Go answer the door," he told them. "Both of us?" his daughter asked. "Both of you. But do as I say." They slid off their chairs and left the room, glancing back at their parents. When the sliding door shut off their view, he turned back to his wife. Her face was pale and tight. She had her lips pressed together. "Darling, please," he said. "Please. You know I wouldn't take you if I wasn't sure it was safe. You know how many times I've flown the ship before. And I know just where we're going. It's safe. Believe me, it's safe." She pressed his hand against her cheek. She closed her eyes and large tears ran out under her lids and down her cheeks. It's not that so much," she said. "It's just leaving, never coming back. We've been here all our lives. It isn't like moving. We can't come back. Ever." "Listen, darling." His voice was tense and hurried. "You know as well as I do. In a matter of years, maybe less, there's going to be another war, a terrible one. There won't be a thing left. We have to leave. For our children, for ourselves." He paused, testing the words in his mind. "For the future of life itself," he finished weakly. He was sorry he said it. Early in the morning, over prosaic food, that kind of talk didn't sound right, even if it was true. "Just don't be afraid," he said. "We'll be all right." She squeezed his hand. "I know," she said quietly. "I know." There were footsteps coming toward them. He pulled out a tissue and gave it to her. She hastily dabbed at her face. The door slid open. The neighbors and their son and daughter came in. The children were excited. They had trouble keeping it down. "Good morning," the neighbor said. The neighbor's wife went to his wife, and the two of them went over to the window and talked in low voices. The children stood around, fidgeted, and looked nervously at each other. "You've eaten?" he asked his neighbor. "Yes," his neighbor said. "Don't you think we'd better be going?" I suppose so.
They left all the dishes on the table. His wife went upstairs and got garments for the family. He and his wife stayed on the porch a moment while the rest went out to the ground car. Should we lock the door? She smiled helplessly and ran a hand through her hair. She shrugged. Does it matter? She said, and turned away. He locked the door and followed her down the walk. She turned as he came up to her. It's a nice house, she murmured. Don't think about it, he said. They turned their backs on their home and got in the ground car. Did you lock it? Asked the neighbor. Yes. The neighbor smiled wryly. So did we, he said. I tried not to, but then I had to go back. They moved through the quiet streets. The edges of the sky were beginning to redden. The neighbor's wife and the 4 children were in back. His wife and the neighbor were in front with him. Going to be a nice day, said the neighbor. I suppose so, I said. Have you told your children? The neighbor asked. Of course not. I haven't, insisted his neighbor. I was just asking. Oh. They rode in silence a while. Do you ever get the feeling that we're running out? Asked the neighbor. He tightened. No, he said, his lips pressed together. No. I guess it's better not to talk about it, his neighbor said hastily. Much better, he said. As they drove up to the guardhouse at the gate, he turned to the back. Remember, he said, not a word from any of you. The guard was sleepy and didn't care. The guard recognized him right away as the chief test pilot for the new ship. That was enough. The family was coming down to watch him off, he told the guard. That was all right. The guard let them drive to the ship's platform. The car stopped under the huge columns. They all got out and stared up. Far above them, its nose pointed toward the sky, the great metal ship was beginning to reflect the early morning glow. Let's go, he said. Quickly. As they hurried toward the ship's elevator, he stopped for a moment to look back. The guardhouse looked deserted. He looked around at everything and tried to fix it all in his memory. He bent over and picked up some dirt. He put it in his pocket. Goodbye, he whispered. He ran to the elevator. The doors shut in front of them. There was no sound in the rising cubicle but the hum of the motor and a few self-conscious coughs from the children. He looked at them. To be taken so young, he thought, without a chance to help. He closed his eyes. His wife's arm rested on his arm. He looked at her. Their eyes met, and she smiled at him. It's all right, she whispered. The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors slid open and they went out. It was getting lighter. He hurried them along the enclosed platform. They all climbed through the narrow doorway in the ship's side. He hesitated before following them. He wanted to say something fitting the moment. It burned in him to say something fitting the moment. He couldn't. He swung in and grunted as he pulled the door shut and turned the wheel tight. That's it, he said. Come on, everybody. Their footsteps echoed on the metal decks and ladders as they went up to the control room. The children ran to the ports and looked out. They gasped when they saw how high they were. Their mothers stood behind them, looking down at the ground with frightened eyes. He went up to them. So high. So high, said his daughter. He patted her head gently. So high, he repeated. Then he turned abruptly and went over to the instrument panel. He stood there hesitantly. He heard someone come up behind him. Shouldn't we tell the children? Asked his wife. Shouldn't we let them know that's their last look? Go ahead, tell them. He waited to hear footsteps. There were none. She turned. He turned. She kissed him on the cheek. Then she went to tell the children. He threw over the switch. Deep in the belly of the ship, a spark ignited the fuel. A concentrated rush of gas flooded from the vents. The bulkheads began to shake. He heard his daughter crying. He tried not to listen. He extended a trembling hand toward the lever, then glanced back suddenly. They were all staring at him. He put his hand on the lever and threw it forward and threw it over. The ship quivered a brief second, then they felt it rush along the smooth incline. It flashed up into the air faster and faster. They all heard the wind rushing past. He watched the children turn to the ports and look out again. "Goodbye," they said. "Goodbye." He sank down wearily at the control panel. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw his neighbor sit down next to him. "You know just where we're going?" his neighbor asked. "On that chart there." His neighbor looked at the chart, his eyebrows raised. "In another solar system," he said. "That's right. It has an atmosphere like ours. We'll be safe there." "The race will be safe," said his neighbor. He nodded once and looked back at his and his neighbor's family. They were still looking out the ports. "What?" he asked. "I said," the neighbor repeated. "Which one of these planets is it?" He leaned over the chart, pointed. "That small one over there," he said. "Near that moon." "This one? Third from the sun?" "That's right," he said. "That one. Third from the sun." Dun, 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 dun. Oh man, we're only at an hour here. So how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody having a good week? Yeah, it's a great twist. It's one of those things that the Twilight Zone did so well. Tapping is clapping. Thank you. Yeah, pretty much. Adam and Eve and their neighbor. So I do have another story that I can read. Actually, I think I might have two, but we'll see. Oh, TikTok, what do you want from me? Some reason it's always convinced that I'm a bot, even though my face is like right on the camera. It's crazy. Anyway. So, let's see here. So the next story I have is by the author's name is Henry Kuttner, and it's called "What You Need." We have what you need. That's what the sign said. Tim Carmichael, who worked for a trade paper that specialized in economics and eked out a meager salary by selling sensational and untrue articles to the tabloids, failed to sense a story in the reversed sign. He thought it was a cheap publicity gag, something one seldom encounters on Park Avenue, where the shop fonts are noted for their classic dignity, and he was irritated. He growled silently, walked on, then suddenly turned and came back. He wasn't quite strong enough to resist the temptation to unscramble the sentence, though his annoyance grew. He stood before the window, staring up, and said to himself, "We have what you need. Yeah." The sign was in prim small letters on a black painted ribbon that stretched across a narrow glass pane. Below it was one of those curved, invisible glass windows. Through the window, Carmichael could see an expanse of white velvet with a few objects carefully arranged there. A rusty nail, a snowshoe, and a diamond tiara. It looked like a Dali decor for
Cartier or Tiffany. Jewelers, Carmichael asked silently. But why what you need? He pictured millionaires miserably despondent for lack of a matched pearl necklace, heiresses weeping inconsolably because they needed a few star sapphires. The principle of luxury merchandising was to deal with the whipped cream of supply and demand. Few people needed diamonds. They merely wanted them and could afford them. Or the place might sell genie flasks, Carmichael decided, or magic wands. Same principle as a coney carney, a sucker trap. Bill the what's-it outside, and people will pay their dimes and flock in for 2 cents. He was dyspeptic. What is that? Dyspeptic? Yeah, dyspeptic. We'll go with that. That's the pronunciation we're going to go with. And generally disliked the world. Prospect of a scapegoat was attractive, and his press card gave him a certain advantage. He opened the door and walked into the shop. It was Park Avenue, all right. There were no showcases or counters. It might be an art gallery, for a few good oils were displayed on the walls. An air of overpowering luxury, with the bleakness of an unlived-in space, struck Carmichael. Through a curtain at the back came a very tall man with carefully combed white hair, a ruddy, healthy face, and sharp blue eyes. He might have been 60. He wore expensive but careless tweeds, which somehow jarred with the decor. "Good morning," the man said with a quick glance at Carmichael's clothes. He seemed slightly surprised. "May I help you?" "Maybe." Carmichael introduced himself and showed his press card. "Oh, my name is Tally, Peter Tally. I saw your sign." "Oh?" "Our paper's always on the lookout for possible write-ups. I've never noticed your shop before." I did have a cover for this one. Dyspeptic. Yes, thank you. "Our paper is always on the lookout for possible write-ups. I've never noticed your shop before." "I've been here for years," Tally said. "This is an art gallery?" "Well, no." The door opened. A florid man came in and greeted Tally cordially. Carmichael, recognizing the client, felt his opinion of the shop swinging rapidly upward. The florid man was a name. A big one. "It's a bit early, Mr. Tally," he said, "but I didn't want to delay. Have you had time to get what I needed?" "Oh, yes, I have it. One moment." Tally hurried through the draperies and returned with a small, neatly wrapped parcel, which he gave to the florid man. The latter forked over a check. Carmichael caught a glimpse of the amount and gulped, and departed. His town car was at the curbside. Carmichael moved to the door where he could watch. The florid man seemed anxious. His chauffeur waited stolidly as the parcel was unwrapped with hurried fingers. "I'm not sure I'd want the publicity, Mr. Carmichael," Tally said. "I have a select clientele, carefully chosen." "Perhaps our weekly economic bulletins might interest you." Tally tried not to laugh. "Oh, I don't think so. It really isn't my line." The florid man had finally unwrapped the parcel and taken out an egg. As far as Carmichael could see from the post near the door, it was merely an ordinary egg. But its possessor regarded it almost with awe. Had Earth's last hen died 10 years before, the man could have been no more pleased. Something like deep relief showed on the florid, tanned face.
He said something to the chauffeur, and the car rolled smoothly forward and was gone. "Are you in the dairy business?" Carmichael asked abruptly.
No.
"Do you mind telling me what your business is?"
"I'm afraid I do, rather," Tally said.
Carmichael was beginning to scent a story. "Of course, I could find out through the Better Business Bureau."
"You couldn't."
"No? They might be interested in knowing why an egg is worth $5,000 to one of your customers."
Tally said, "My clientele is so small, I must charge high fees. You, know that a Chinese mandarin has been known to pay thousands of taels for eggs of proved antiquity."
Excuse me. "That guy wasn't a Chinese mandarin," Carmichael said.
"Ah, well, as I say, I don't welcome publicity."
"I think you do. I was in the advertising game for a while. Spelling your sign backwards is an obvious baited hook."
"Then you're no psychologist," Tally said. "It's just that I can afford to indulge my whims. For 5 years I looked at that window every day and read the sign backwards from inside my shop. It annoyed me. You know how a word will begin to look funny if you keep staring at it? Any word turns into something in no human tongue. Well, I discovered I was getting a neurosis about that sign. It makes no sense backwards, but I kept finding myself trying to read sense into it. When I started to say, 'Din oyo what ava way' to myself, and looking for philosophical derivations, I called in a sign painter. People who are interested enough still drop in."
"Not many," Carmichael said shrewdly. "This is Park Avenue, and you've got the place fixed up too expensively. Nobody in the low-income brackets or middle brackets would come in here, so you run an upper-bracket business."
"Well," Tally said, "yes, I do."
"And you won't tell me what it is?"
"I'd rather not."
"I could find out, you know. Might be dope, pornography, high-class fencing."
"Very likely," Mr. Tally said smoothly. "I buy stolen jewels, conceal them in eggs, and sell them to my customers. Or perhaps that egg was loaded with microscopic French postcards. Good morning, Mr. Carmichael."
"Good morning," Carmichael said, and went out. He was overdue at the office, but annoyance was the stranger motivation. He played sleuth for a while, keeping his eye on Tally's shop, and the results were thoroughly satisfactory, to a certain extent. He learned everything, but why? Late in the afternoon, he sought out Mr. Tally again. "Wait a minute," he said at the sight of the proprietor's discouraging face. "For all you know, I may be a customer." Tally laughed. "Well, why not?" Carmichael compressed his lips. "How do you know the size of my bank account? Or maybe you've got a restricted clientele."
"No, but,"
Carmichael said quickly, "I've been doing some investigating. I've been noticing your customers. In fact, following them, and finding out what they buy from you." Tally's face changed.
"Indeed."
"Indeed. They're all in a hurry to unwrap their little bundles, so that gave me my chance to find out. I missed a few, but I saw enough to apply a couple of rules of logic. Mr. Tally, item, your customers don't know what they're buying from you. Sort of a grab bag. A couple of times they were plenty surprised. The man who opened his parcel and found an old newspaper clipping. What about the sunglasses? And the revolver? Probably illegal, by the way, no license. And the diamond? It must have been paste, it was so big." Mr. Tally said. "I'm no smart apple, but I can smell a screwy setup. Most of your clients are big shots.
in one way or another. And why didn't any of them pay you? Like the first man, the guy who came in when I was there this morning. It's chiefly a credit business, Tally said. I've my ethics. I have to, for my own conscience. It's responsibility. You see, I sell my goods with a guarantee. Payment is made only if the product proves satisfactory.
So, an egg, sunglasses, a pair of asbestos gloves. I think they were. A newspaper clipping? A gun? A diamond? How do you take inventory? Tally said nothing. Carmichael grinned. You've an errand boy. You send him out and he comes back with bundles. Maybe he goes to a grocery store on Madison and buys an egg, or a pawn shop on 6th for a revolver, or, well, anyhow, I told you I'd find out what your business is.
And have you? Tally asked.
We have what you need, Carmichael said. But how do you know?
You're jumping to conclusions.
I've got a headache. I didn't have sunglasses, and I don't believe in magic. Listen, Mr. Tally, I'm fed up to the eyebrows and way beyond little queer shops that sell peculiar things. I know too much about 'em. I've written about 'em. A guy walks along the street and sees a funny sort of store, and the proprietor won't serve him. He sells only to pixies. Or else he does sell them a magic charm with a double edge. Well, phew!
Tally said. As much as you like.
But you can't get away from logic. Either you've got a sound, sensible racket here, or else it's one of those funny magic shop setups, and I don't believe that, for it isn't logical.
Why not?
Because of economics, Carmichael said flatly. Grant the idea that you've got certain mysterious powers. Let's say you can make telepathic gadgets, all right? Why the devil would you start a business so you could sell the gadgets so you could make money so you could live? You'd simply put on one of your gadgets, read the stockbroker's mind, and buy the right stocks. That's the intrinsic fallacy in these crazy shop things. If you've got enough stuff on the ball to be able to stock and run such a shop, you wouldn't need a business in the first place. Why go around Robin Hood's barn? Tally said nothing. Carmichael smiled crookedly.
I often wonder what the vintners buy 1/2 so precious as the stuff they sell, he quoted. Well, what do you buy?
I know what you sell. Eggs and sunglasses.
You're an inquisitive man, Mr. Carmichael, Tally murmured. Has it ever occurred to you that this is none of your business?
I may be a customer, Carmichael repeated. How about that? Tally's cool blue eyes were intent. A new light dawned in them. Tally pursed his lips and scowled.
I hadn't thought of that, he admitted. You might be. Under the circumstances, will you excuse me for a moment?
Sure, Carmichael said. Tally went through the curtains. Outside, traffic drifted idly along Park as the sun slid down beyond the Hudson. The street lay in a blue shadow that crept imperceptibly up the barricades of the buildings. Carmichael stared at the sign. We have what you need, and smiled. In a back room, Tally put his eye on a binocular plate and moved a calibrated dial. He did this several times, then biting his lip, for he was a gentleman. He called for his errand boy and gave him directions. After that, he returned to Carmichael.
You're a customer, he said, under certain conditions. 'conditions.
The condition of my bank account, you mean?
No, Tally said. I'll give you reduced rates. Understand one thing. I really do have what you need. You don't know what you need, but I know. And as it happens, well, I'll sell you what you need for, let's say, $5. Carmichael reached for his wallet. Tally held up a hand. Pay me after you're satisfied, and the money is the nominal part of the fee. There's another part. If you're satisfied, I want you to promise me that you'll never come near this shop again, and never mention it to anyone.
I see, Carmichael said slowly. His theories had changed slightly.
It won't be long before... here he is now.
A buzzing from the back indicated the return of the errand boy. Tally said, "Excuse me," and vanished. Soon he returned with a neatly wrapped parcel, which he thrust into Carmichael's hands.
"Keep this on your person," Tally said. "Good afternoon."
Carmichael nodded, pocketed the parcel, and went out. Feeling affluent, he hailed a taxi and went to a cocktail bar he knew. There, in the dim light of a booth, he unwrapped the bundle. Protection money, he decided. Tally was paying him off to keep his mouth shut about the racket, whatever it was. Okay, live and let live. How much would it be? 10,000? 50,000? How big was the racket? He opened an oblong cardboard box. Within, nestling upon tissue paper, was a pair of shears, the blades protected by a sheath of folded, glued cardboard. Carmichael said something softly. He drank his highball and ordered another, but left it untasted. Glancing at his wristwatch, he decided that the Park Avenue shop would be closed by now, and Mr. Peter Tally gone. "One half so precious as the stuff they sell," Carmichael said. "Maybe it's the scissors of Atropos." Blah. He unsheathed the scissors, the blades, and snipped experimentally at the air. Nothing happened. Slightly crimson around the cheekbones, Carmichael reholstered the shears and dropped them into the side pocket of his topcoat. Quite a gag. He decided to call on Peter Tally tomorrow. Meanwhile, what? He remembered he had a dinner date with one of the girls at the office and hastily paid his bill and left. The streets were darkening and a cold wind blew southward from the park. Carmichael wound his scarf tighter around his throat and made gestures toward the passing taxis. He was considerably annoyed. Half an hour later, a thin man with sad eyes, Jerry Worth, one of the copywriters from his office, greeted him at the bar where Carmichael was killing time. "Waiting for Betsy?" Worth said, nodding toward the restaurant annex. "She sent me to tell you she couldn't make it. Rush deadline. Apologies and stuff. Where were you today? Things got a bit gummed up. Have a drink with me." They worked on a rye. Carmichael was already slightly stiff. The dull crimson around his cheekbones had deepened, and his frown had become set. "What you need," he remarked. "Double-crossing little—" "Huh?" Worth said. "Nothing. Drink up. I've just decided to get a guy in trouble if I can." "You almost got yourself in trouble today. That trend analysis of ours?" "Eggs. Sunglasses. I got you out of a jam." "Shut up," Carmichael said, and ordered another round. Every time he felt the weight of the shears in his pocket, he found his lips moving. 5 shots later, Worth said plaintively, "I don't mind doing good deeds, but I do like to mention them, and you won't let me. All I want is a little gratitude." "All right, mention them," Carmichael said.
Brag your head off. Who cares? Worth showed satisfaction. That ore analysis, it was that. You weren't at the office today, but I caught it. I checked with our records and you had Transsteel all wrong. If I hadn't altered the figures, it would have gone down to the printer. What? The Transsteel, they... Oh, you fool, Carmichael groaned. I know it didn't check with the office figures. I meant to put in a notice to have them changed. I got my dope from the source. Why don't you mind your own business? Worth blinked. I was trying to help. It would have been good for a $5 raise, Carmichael said. After all the research I did to uncover the real dope. Listen, has the stuff gone to bed yet? I don't know. Maybe not. Croft was still checking the copy. Okay, Carmichael said. Next time. He jerked at his scarf, jumped off the stool, and headed for the door, trailed by the protesting Worth. 10 minutes later, he was at the office, listening to Croft's bland explanation that the copy had already been dispatched to the printer. What does it matter? Was there... Incidentally, where were you today? Dancing on the rainbow, Carmichael snapped and departed. He had switched over from rye to whiskey sours, and the cold night air naturally did not sober him. Swaying slightly, watching the sidewalk move a little as he blinked at it, he stood on the curb and pondered. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim, Worth said. It's too late now, though. There won't be any trouble. You've got a right to go buy our office records. Stop me now, Carmichael said. Lousy little... He was angry and drunk. On impulse, he got another taxi and sped to the printers, still trailing a somewhat confused Jerry Worth. There was rhythmic thunder in the building. The swift movement of the taxi had given Carmichael a slight nausea. His head ached, and alcohol was in solution in his blood. The hot, inky air was unpleasant. The great linotypes thumped and growled. Men were moving about. It was all slightly nightmarish, and Carmichael doggedly hunched his shoulders and lurched on until something jerked him back and began to strangle him. Worth started yelling. His face showed drunken terror. He made ineffectual gestures, but it was all part of the nightmare. Carmichael saw what happened. The ends of his scarf had caught in the moving gears somewhere, and he was being drawn inexorably into meshing metal cogs. Men were running. The clanking, thumping, rolling sounds were deafening. He pulled at the scarf. Worth screamed, "Knife! Cut it!" The warping of relative values that intoxication gives saved Carmichael. Sober, he would have been helpless with panic. As it was, each thought was hard to capture, but clear and lucid when he finally got it. He remembered the shears, and he put his hand in his pocket. The blades slipped out of their cardboard sheath, and he snipped through the scarf with fumbling, hasty movements. The white silk disappeared. Carmichael fingered the ragged edge of his throat and smiled stiffly. Mr. Peter Talley had been hoping that Carmichael would not come back. The probability lines had shown two possible variants. In one, all was well. In the other... Carmichael walked into the shop the next morning and held out a $5 bill. Talley took it. "Thank you, but you could have mailed me a check." "I could have, only that wouldn't have told me what I needed to know." "No," Talley said and sighed. "You've decided, haven't you?" "Do you blame me?" Carmichael asked. "Last night, do you know what happened?" "Yes." "How?" "I might as well tell you," Talley said. "You've found out anyway. That's certain, anyhow." Carmichael sat down, lit a cigarette, and nodded.
Logic. You couldn't have arranged that little accident by any manner of means. Betsy Hogue decided to break our date early yesterday morning, before I saw you. That was the beginning of the chain of incidents that led up to the accident. Ergo, you must have known what was going to happen.
I did know.
Prescience?
Mechanical. I saw that you would be crushed in the machine.
Which implies an alterable future.
Certainly, Tally said, his shoulders slumping. There are innumerable possible variants to the future, different lines of probability, all depending on the outcome of various crises as they arise. I happen to be skilled in certain branches of electronics. Some years ago, almost by accident, I stumbled on the principle of seeing the future.
How?
Chiefly, it involves a personal focus on the individual. The moment you enter this place, he gestured, you're in the beam of my scanner. In my back room, I have the machine itself. By turning a calibrated dial, I check the possible futures. Sometimes there are many, sometimes only a few, as though at times certain stations weren't broadcasting. I look into my scanner and see what you need, and supply it.
Carmichael let smoke drift from his nostrils. He watched the blue coils through narrowed eyes. You follow a man's whole life, in triplicate or quadruplicate or whatever.
No, Tally said. I've got my device focused so it's sensitive to crisis curves. When those occur, I follow them further to see what probability paths involve the man's safe and happy survival.
The sunglasses, the egg, and the gloves.
Tally said, Mr. Smith is one of my regular clients. Whenever he passes a crisis successfully with my aid, he comes back for another checkup. I locate his next crisis and supply him with what he needs to meet it. I gave him the asbestos gloves. In about a month, a situation will arise where he must, under the circumstances, move a red-hot bar of metal. He's an artist, his hands.
I see. So it isn't always saving a man's life.
Well, of course not, Tally said. Life isn't the only vital factor. An apparently minor crisis may lead to, well, a divorce, a neurosis, a wrong decision, and the loss of hundreds of lives indirectly. I ensure life, health, and happiness.
You're an altruist. Only why doesn't the world storm your doors? Why limit your trade to a few?
I haven't got the time or the equipment.
More machines could be built.
Well, Tally said, most of my customers are wealthy. I must live.
You could read tomorrow's stock market reports if you wanted dough,
Carmichael said. We get back to that old question. If a guy has miraculous powers, why is he satisfied to run a hole-in-the-wall store? Economic reasons. I'm averse to gambling.
That wouldn't be gambling, Carmichael pointed out. I often wonder what the vintners buy. Just what do you get out of this?
Satisfaction, Tally said. Call it that.
But Carmichael wasn't satisfied. His mind veered from the question and turned to the possibilities. Insurance? Life, health, and happiness. What about me? Won't there be another crisis in my life sometime?
Probably. But not necessarily one involving personal danger.
Then I'm a permanent customer.
I don't...
Listen, Carmichael said. I'm not trying to shake you down. I'll pay. I'll pay plenty. I'm not rich, but I know exactly what a service like this would be worth to me. No worries.
It couldn't be.
Oh, come off it. I'm not a blackmailer or anything. I'm not threatening you with publicity, if that's what you're afraid of. I'm an ordinary guy, not a melodramatic villain. Do I look dangerous? What are you afraid of?
You're an ordinary guy, yes, Tally admitted. Only...
Why not? Carmichael argued.
I won't bother you. I passed one crisis successfully with your help. There'll be another one due sometime. Give me what I need for that. Charge me anything you like. I'll get the dough somehow. Borrow it if necessary. I won't disturb you at all. All I ask is that you let me come in whenever I've passed a crisis and get ammunition for the next one. What's wrong with that? Nothing, Tally said soberly. Well then, I'm an ordinary guy. There's a girl. It's Betsy Hogue. I want to marry her, settle down somewhere in the country, raise kids, and have security. There's nothing wrong with that either, is there? Tally said. It was too late the moment you entered this shop today. Carmichael looked up. Why? He asked sharply. A buzzer rang in the back. Tally went through the curtains and came back almost immediately with a wrapped parcel. He gave it to Carmichael. Carmichael smiled. Thanks, he said. Thanks a lot. Do you have any idea when my next crisis will come? In a week. Mind if I... Carmichael was unwrapping the package. He took out a pair of plastic-soled shoes and looked at Tally, bewildered. Like that. I'll need shoes? Yes. I suppose. Carmichael hesitated. I guess you wouldn't tell me why. No, I won't do that. But to be sure to wear them whenever you go out. Don't worry about that. And I'll mail you a check. Might take me a few days to scrape up the dough, but I'll do it. How much? $500. I'll mail a check today. I prefer not to accept a fee until the client has been satisfied, Tally said. He had grown more reserved, his blue eyes cool and withdrawn. Suit yourself, Carmichael said. I'm going out and celebrate. You don't drink? I can't leave the shop. Well, goodbye. Thanks again. Won't be any trouble to you, you know. I promise that. He turned away. Looking after him, Tally smiled, a wry, unhappy smile. He did not answer Carmichael's goodbye. Not then. When the door had closed behind him, Tally turned to the back of his shop and went through the door where the scanner was. The lapse of 10 years can cover a multitude of changes. A man with the possibility of tremendous power almost within his grasp can alter in that time from a man who will not reach for it to a man who will, and moral values be damned. The change did not come quickly to Carmichael. It speaks well for his integrity that it took 10 years to work such an alteration in all he had been taught. On the day he first went into Tally's shop, there was little evil in him. But the temptation grew stronger week by week, visit by visit. Tally, for reasons of his own, was content to sit idly by, waiting for customers, smothering the inconceivable potentialities of his machine under a blanket of trivial functions. But Carmichael was not content. It took him 10 years to reach the day, but the day came at last. Tally sat in the inner room, his back to the door. He was slumped low in an ancient rocker facing the machine. It had changed little in the space of a decade. It still covered most of 2 walls, and the eyepiece of its little scanner glittered under amber fluorescence. Carmichael looked covetously at the eyepiece. It was window and doorway to a power beyond any man's dreams. Wealth beyond imagining lay just within that tiny opening. The rights over the life and death of every man alive. And nothing between that fabulous future and himself except the man who sat looking at the machine. Tally did not seem to hear the careful steps or the creak of the door behind him. He did not stir as Carmichael lifted the gun slowly. One might think that he never guessed what was coming, or why, or from whom, as Carmichael shot him through the head. Tally sighed and shivered a little and twisted the scanner dial. It was not the first time that the eyepiece had shown him his own lifeless body, glimpsed down some vista of probability, but he never saw the slumping of that figure without feeling a breath of indescribable coolness blow backwards upon him out of the eyepiece. He straightened from the eyepiece and sat back in his chair, looking thoughtfully at a pair of rough-soled shoes lying beside him on the table. He sat quietly for a while, his eyes upon the shoes, his mind following Carmichael down the street and into the evening, and the morrow, and on toward that coming crisis which would depend on his secure footing on a subway platform as a train thundered by the place where Carmichael would be standing one day next week. Tally had sent his messenger boy out this time for 2 pairs of shoes. He hesitated long, an hour ago, between the rough-soled pair and the smooth. For Tally was a humane man, and there were many times when his job was distasteful to him. But in the end, this time, it had been the smooth-soled pair he had wrapped for Carmichael. Now he sighed and bent to the scanner again, twisting the dial to bring into view a scene he had watched before. Carmichael standing on a crowded subway platform, glittering with oily wetness from some overflow. Carmichael in the slick-soled shoes Tally had chosen for him. A commotion in the crowd, a surge toward the platform edge, Carmichael's feet slipping frantically as the train roared by. "Goodbye, Mr. Carmichael," Tally murmured. It was the farewell he had not spoken when Carmichael left the shop. He spoke it regretfully, and the regret was for the Carmichael of today, who did not deserve that end. He was not now a melodramatic villain whose death one could watch unmoved. But the Carmichael of today had atonement to make for the Carmichael of 10 years ahead, and the payment must be exacted. It is not a good thing to have the power of life and death over one's fellow humans. Peter Tally knew it was not a good thing. But the power had been put into his hands. He had not sought it. It seemed to him that the machine had grown almost by accident to its tremendous completion under his trained fingers and trained mind. At first it had puzzled him. How ought such a device to be used? What dangers, what terrible penalties lay in that eye that could see through the veil of tomorrow? His was the responsibility, and it had weighed heavily upon him until the answer came. And after he knew the answer, well, the weight was heavier still. For Tally was a mild man. He could not have told anyone the real reason why he was a shopkeeper. Satisfaction, he had said to Carmichael, and sometimes indeed there was deep satisfaction. But at other times, at times like this, there was only dismay and humility, especially humility. "We have what you need." Only Tally knew that message was not for the individuals who came to his shop. The pronoun was plural, not singular. It was a message for the world whose future was being carefully, lovingly reshaped under Peter Tally's guidance. The main line of the future was not easy to alter. The future is a pyramid shaping slowly, brick by brick, and brick by brick, Tally had to change it. There were some men who were necessary, men who would create and build, men who should be saved. Tally gave them what they needed. But inevitably there were others whose ends were evil. Tally gave them, too, what the world needed: death. Peter Talley had not asked for this terrible power, but the key had been put in his hands, and he dared not delegate such authority as this to any other man alive. Sometimes he makes mistakes. He had felt a little surer since the simile of the key had occurred to him. The key to the future. A key that had been laid in his hands. Remembering that, he leaned back in his chair and reached for an old and well-worn book. It fell open easily at a familiar passage. Peter Talley's lips moved as he read the passage once again in his room behind the shop on Park Avenue. "And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven." That's the end. So, we have about 25 minutes left. And I do have one other story. A couple of things we could do. Let's see. It's a great story. It really is. So many of the episodes of The Twilight Zone were based on short stories. Rod Serling was a huge fan of so many of the science fiction writers of the time, and he tried to get as many of their stories turned into Twilight Zone episodes as he could. Let's see, what else do I have? So, let me see. There is oh yeah, we could do this one. Alrighty then. So this one is another story that was turned into a Twilight Zone episode. And if you guys remember, we actually did a story that was a Twilight Zone episode a few weeks ago. Maybe late last year we did Time Enough at Last by Lynn Venable. A great story where the bank clerk... I have not seen Tales from the Void. I will have to look that up. There's actually quite a few episodes of like Alfred Hitchcock Presents and The Outer Limits that were short stories before they became episodes. I will look it up and I will thank you later. So anyway, this story is called The Chaser by John Collier. Alan Austin, as nervous as a kitten, went up certain dark and creaky stairs in the neighborhood of Pell Street and peered about for a long time on the dime landing before he found the name he wanted written obscurely on one of the doors. He pushed open this door, as he had been told to do, and found himself in a tiny room which contained no furniture but a plain kitchen table, a rocking chair, and an ordinary chair. One of the dirty, buff-colored walls were a group of shelves containing in all perhaps a dozen bottles and jars. An old man sat in the rocking chair reading a newspaper. Alan, without a word, handed him the card he had been given. You know what? I forgot I actually have a I actually do have a cover for this one. Ta-da!
No, I like this one. I found a copy of it online. The two previous ones were from a book called The Best of Richard Matheson and The Best of Henry Kuttner. Those were two books I actually purchased, and there's going to be a lot of Richard Matheson coming because a lot of those stories are fantastic. Anyway, sit down, Mr. Austin, said the old man very politely. I'm glad to make your acquaintance. Is it true, asked Alan, that you have a certain mixture that has quite extraordinary effects? My dear sir, replied the old man, my stock in trade is not very large. I don't deal in laxatives and teething mixtures, but as such as it is varied. I think nothing I sell has effects which could be precisely described as ordinary. Well, the fact is, began Alan. Here, for example, interrupted the old man, reaching for a bottle from the shelf, here is a liquid, colourless as water, almost tasteless, quite imperceptible in coffee, wine, or any other beverage. It is also quite imperceptible to any known method of autopsy. Do you mean it's a poison? Cried Alan, very much horrified. Call it a glove cleaner, if you like, said the old man indifferently. Maybe it will clean gloves. I have never tried. One might call it a life cleaner. Lives need cleaning sometimes. I want nothing of the sort, said Alan. Probably it is just as well, said the old man. Do you know the price of this? For one teaspoonful, which is sufficient, I ask $5,000. Never less, not a penny less. I hope all your mixtures are not as expensive, said Alan apprehensively. Oh, dear, no, said the old man. I would be no good charging that sort of price for a love potion, for example. Young people who need a love potion very seldom have $5,000. Otherwise they would not need a love potion. I'm glad to hear that, said Alan. I look at it like this, said the old man. Please a customer with one article, and he will come back when he needs another, even if it is more costly. He will save up for it if necessary. So, said Alan, you really do sell love potions? If I did not sell love potions, said the old man, reaching for another bottle, I should not have mentioned the other matter to you. It is only when one is in position to oblige that one can afford to be so confidential. And these potions, said Alan, they're not just, oh no, said the old man. Their effects are permanent and extend far beyond mere casual impulse. But they include it. Oh yes, they include it. Bountifully, insistently, everlastingly. Dear me, said Alan, attempting to look of scientific detachment. How very interesting. But consider the spiritual side, said the old man. I do indeed, said Alan. For indifference, said the old man, they substitute devotion. For scorn, adoration. Give one tiny measure of this to the young lady. Its flavor is imperceptible in orange juice, soup, or cocktails, and however gay and giddy she is, she will change altogether. She will want nothing but solitude and you. I can hardly believe it, said Alan. She's so fond of parties. She will not like them any more,
said the old man. "She will be afraid of the pretty girls you may meet."
She will actually be jealous?" cried Alan in a rapture. "Of me?"
"Yes, she will want to be everything to you."
"She is already, only she doesn't care about it."
"She will, when she has taken this. She will care intensely. You will be her sole interest in life."
"Wonderful!" cried Alan.
"She will want to know all you do," said the old man. "All that has happened to you during the day, every word of it. She will want to know what you are thinking about. While you smile suddenly, why are you looking so sad?"
"That is love!" cried Alan.
"Yes," said the old man. "How carefully she will look after you. She will never allow you to be tired, to sit in a draught, or to neglect your food. If you are an hour late, she will be terrified. She will think you are killed, or that some siren has caught you."
"I can hardly imagine Diana like that," cried Alan, overwhelmed with joy.
"You will not have to use your imagination," said the old man. "And by the way, since there are always sirens, if by any chance you should later on slip a little, you need not worry. She will forgive you in the end. She will be terribly hurt, of course, but she will forgive you in the end."
"That will not happen," said Alan fervently.
"Of course not," said the old man. "But if it did, you need not worry. She would never divorce you. Oh, no, and of course she will never give you the very least grounds for uneasiness."
"And how much," said Alan, "is this wonderful mixture?"
"It is not as dear," said the old man, "as the glove cleaner, or life cleaner, as I sometimes call it. No, that is $5,000, never a penny less. One has to be older than you are to indulge in that sort of thing. One has to save up for it."
"But the love potion," said Alan.
"Oh, that," said the old man, opening the drawer in the kitchen table and taking out a tiny, rather dirty-looking phial. "That is just $1.
"I can't tell you how grateful I am," said Alan, watching him fill it.
"I like to oblige," said the old man.
"Then customers come back later in life when they are better off and want more expensive things."
"Here you are. You will find it very effective."
"Thank you again," said Alan. "Goodbye."
"Au revoir," said the man.
I wonder what he'll be coming back for. The glove cleaner, by chance? Oh, boy. So this has been a super fun night. Yes, Alan is going to regret this. Very, very much. So I'll read you my little script that I have for the ending thing, because I know we're a little early, but 10 minutes isn't going to kill anybody. And so our brief journey through the strange and speculative has come to an end. Tonight we visited a few corners of imagination that once found their way into the pages of mid-century science fiction. Stories written during a time when the world seemed poised between extraordinary possibility and very real uncertainty. Writers like Damon Knight, Richard Matheson, John Collier, and Henry Kuttner explored those uneasy spaces where human nature meets the unknown, where curiosity, fear, hope, and ambition all collide. Sometimes the answers they found were ironic, sometimes unsettling, and sometimes they simply reminded us that the most mysterious territory we will ever explore may not lie in distant galaxies or hidden dimensions, but within ourselves. So, yeah, I had to do the Rod Serling thing. But for anybody that is new tonight, welcome. I appreciate the fact that you are here. I do lives every Wednesday night and every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Wednesdays is, as you see, Storytime with Undead Papa. And Sundays is Sunday night bedtime stories. And those where we are currently on Sundays, we're reading Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which may sound familiar because it was the basis for the film from the 80s, The Secret of Nim. Wednesday nights are reserved for stories like this. A little darker, a little spookier, a little more unsettling. Science fiction, Edgar Allan Poe, Lovecraft, all that fun stuff. So, if you really like what I'm doing here and you want to help support the channel, I do offer a subscription, which is $2.99 a month. You get some fun stickers that Tessa has been throwing around tonight, and also a subscriber-only space where you can have a voice in helping me build this channel. Things like what books we read next and stuff like that. I very much would love to have you. However, whether you subscribe or not, I am just grateful that you are here with me tonight. I know it's sometimes a little crazy, and it's nice to have a couple of hours to just relax and listen to a story and forget about all the insanity. But this is where I will leave you for the evening. Thank you for being with me. As always, please be kind to each other and be kind to yourself, because kindness matters. And so do you. I'll see you on Sunday.